Alright, so today I am doing mix of work stuff. It's Saturday. I have to get the ATV over to Highland Cycles in Montrose, just north of town. Morgan Spradling is the owner of the shop. Zach Sheets works there as well. Two very, very cool guys. Morgan has been working with me on a collaboration project of my two-stroke motorized bicycle, which I finally got running yesterday, which is very cool. It's a little slower than we had hoped. It's a gearing and exhaust situation. It's fun though. It's way too much fun for what it is. I've actually spent quite a bit of money on it because I wanted it to be safer, and I need to get the ATV over to Morgan's or Highland Cycles, because I have to use it for some clearing jobs and things. And one of the downsides, so you'll hear me talk a lot about using ATVs in your tree service company for an affordable and budget material handling piece of equipment, and they are great. But one of the downsides to them is that they need oil changes a little bit more frequently. Now, I know people who have run their ATVs for over 100 hours and never changed the oil. That's not recommended, especially if you're doing something like what I'm doing, where I have it in low gear a lot and I'm dragging these heavy logs with a log arch. So about every 3 months I change the oil. It costs me, if I have Highland Cycles do it, it's $45 for labor, and it's about that much, maybe $35 for oil and filters. So it's not the most expensive thing by any means, and when you consider the cost that you pay for the ATV, and even with the maintenance repairs on it, it's relatively affordable. And it's way more affordable and definitely more value oriented than owning a mini skid that you spent tens of thousands of dollars for, 16 grand or 24 grand or whatever it is that you've paid. Now, granted, you're still not getting the lifting power and all that with the ATV. It's a wider device, piece of equipment, so it doesn't fit through the 36-inch walk gates, that kind of stuff. So you are gaining some cons with the ATV, but at least in my circumstance. Now, granted, this would depend on where you work and live as well. If you're in the downtown New York area, the ATV is probably not your best option. But it's really dependent. Where I work and live out here, most of the yards are fairly open, and most of the yards have an access for a lawnmower to get through, a gate that may not be wide enough for the chipper or a truck to get through, but the ATV and the log arch can, and I can drag brush and logs and stuff out of there. And even with aggressive tires, which I need for the mountains, I can, the ATV is light enough that if the property is dry, the ground out here packs so hard I can turn and not dig up everything. Don't forget, you can buy other tires for the ATV that are more turf oriented if you're only doing like residential yards a lot or whatever. So yeah, even tracks on mini skids can totally tear up a yard if not managed right. So I think that's kind of a wash one way or another, just in my opinion. But you do have to deal with more regular maintenance on the ATV, and I would be doing the maintenance on it. In fact, I was planning on doing the oil change and air filter clean myself, but I've had a bit of work come in, which is really good considering all this COVID junk. And so we've had some typical varying spring weather, and it's just not what I was hoping for this in this part of the season, and so I'm a little behind, and I need to work on getting caught up. So it's worth it for me to have Morgan do the work for me this time. So we will have him do that. I'm gonna get it loaded, and then we will be gone. So something I did today that I didn't think about filming, but I will film for you here in the future, is I took the Swisher universal mount system off the ATV, and I gotta say, it was a lot simpler to remove it than I expected it to be. I thought that it would be more problematic to remove the quick release pins, and it was not. The quick release pins and the alignment of the what's it called, the leaf spring from the brackets was super easy. So so far that Swisher device, what I've used of it has been pretty good. It was $160 from Home Depot online, and it shipped straight to my door, and it was really handy. It really distributes the weight. Once again, you do lose some traction on the ATV because now your suspension is a lot more rigid, and it tends to kick up a wheel a lot easier because you have much more limited suspension, at least on mine, because I have an independent A-arm in the rear versus a independent rear suspension. I have a A-arm that both wheels are attached to, the rear axle and diff is, and it moves up and down and laterally slightly, but not much, whereas a lot of the bigger, like the Grizzly or whatever, have the solid chassis with the 2 CV axles, and they move independently. So if you have an independent rear suspension, it won't affect your suspension in the rear that much at all. Mine, it makes it more rigid, and actually for me that's been a benefit. So yeah, overall it's a good device. I'm proud of it as far as the purchase and what it's been able to do for dragging and stuff, and I'm probably going to end up getting a Swisher bucket to be able to load stuff, wood and junk in, pick up piles of chips and load them easier here in the future as well. So the ATV is becoming a small, lightweight tractor, a micro weight tractor maybe is what you'd call it, because you know it's limited in its horsepower and all that stuff, and the chassis weight, the mass of it limits what you can effectively do with it. But yeah, it's working so far pretty well, so I'll keep you guys updated with that as well. I didn't tell you to start recording. Stop recording, GoPro. GoPro, stop recording!
Ah. Hi, Eric's fans. How are you? Hey, Eric. Eric's fans, that's the meanest dude you've ever met right there. That guy right there.